what we've been talking about today is not really the debt ceiling, because I don't even accept that as a kind of legitimate way of looking at it, because the only issue that matters is the size of government. Government imposes costs. Government, there is no economy of scale. You know, when Coca-Cola Company buys the mom and pop cola company in Hicksville, and that will, generally speaking, there'll be economies of scale when you merge the mom and pop cola company into the Coca-Cola Company. That doesn't work on government. The bigger government gets, the more wasteful, the more unproductive it gets, the more stupid it gets. And that's why we should be talking about we shouldn't be talking about it in terms of the debt ceiling, the debt limit. The world will set America's debt limit. And the world is already doing that. I mentioned in a column the other day that basically if you take American spending plans, they foresee the rest of the planet being willing to sink a fifth of its GDP into U.S. Treasury bonds. You know, in other words, the rest of the planet, the Chinese, the Saudis, the Japanese, the British are got to be willing to sink a fifth of their GDP into buying U.S. Treasury debt from Timothy Geithner and Ben Bernanke. And there's no evidence they want to do that. That's the real debt ceiling, and you can't raise that. You're running up against the limits of the planet. We're talking here about, you know, it's one thing to have a spendthrift government in Sweden or Iceland because there's only a couple of million of those guys. It's a very different thing to do it in a country of 300 million people. In other words, you can't have Swedish style, a Swedish style welfare democracy or a Greek style welfare democracy in a continental power of over 300 million people. You just can't do it. There isn't enough money. There isn't enough money on the planet to fund the sheer waste. And that's why you got to have the pushback. I used a phrase when I was here a few weeks ago. When I think the last time I did the show from New York, I'm always very wary about doing this, since I got my fine from the New York State Bureau of Compliance, telling me that I was in non-compliance with the Bureau of Compliance and fining, I forget what the fine was, $15,000 or something, suspiciously round number. But I said that actually what we need is an alliance of non-compliance. And that Americans actually need to stand up and resist this level. The regulation is a very good example of the hidden cost of government. People think there's no cost to there's the cost of the employees and the agency and the bureau and the department. That's just the beginning of it. The real cost is the time it takes out of your life to be in compliance with this vast, excessive, monstrous regulation. And you see that on Wall Street with the Sarbanes-Oxley stuff. You see that on the lemonade stand when a lemonade stand needs 3 different permits. It's part of the same problem, that the bigger the government gets, the more space government requires, the less space liberty has, the less space the citizen has. And that's why it's important. It's absolutely critical to resist this stuff at the most basic possible level. You got to resist it at the municipal level. You got to resist it at the school board level, and that way the debt ceiling type stuff doesn't seem so hopeless. I mean, these guys are nuts. They're talking about trillions and trillions of dollars. They're going to name a multi-trillion-dollar figure. This is what Timothy Geithner and this guy Jacob Lew at the Office of Management and Budget, they say the sensible thing to do, this is the sensible thing to do, to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. The full faith and credit of the United States. That's one of those phrases everybody uses now. That you got to name a multi-trillion-dollar sum that is the new debt limit, and then when you reach that, you'll just jack it up another 3 or 4 trillion. You'll name a new multi-trillion-dollar sum. Now try that in your own life. In how many other situations is the debt limit? This is what's going on in Washington. How many other situations is the debt limit negotiated by 2 different types of borrowers? Now, you and your missus can sit in the living room tonight and say, we're going to negotiate a new debt ceiling for us of $1.8 million. And then we're going to go to the First National Bank of Dead Moose Junction and tell them that we've agreed on a new debt limit of $1.8 million, so give it to us, please. Debt limits are set by the lenders. And in fact, these guys aren't even the borrowers. We're the borrowers. They're the spenders. The spenders are negotiating the burden of debt that they're going to impose on you. You're not part of the conversation. The spenders are talking among themselves about how much debt they're going to place on your shoulders. And this whole accepting the terms of this debate is nuts. And Republicans should be mad about this. The Republican leadership should be saying, we don't want to play this game. You can play this game by yourselves. We want to talk about the size of government. We want to talk about lowering spending. You guys spend too much. There's no point in us negotiating mechanisms to enable you guys to spend as much as you want to spend. There's no point being part of that conversation. The only issue that matters is the spending, and the spending is a liberty issue. Mark